Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, most welcome. Really is a pleasure. I guess, yeah, just for background, we met at the poker club. We were in the same game. I think you did far better than I did that day.
At least I finished or got further on in the tournament than you on that day. But yeah, doesn't mean I'm a better poker player. But
yeah, wasn't one of my better days, that's for sure. But we got talking, and I was quite fascinated by your own journey. I think I've got a bit of a glimpse into it, and I think you also had this sense of like calmness about you, which sort of gravitated to as well. I guess a good place to start would be, what are you doing here in Bali? What's brought you here today?
yeah, I mean, I came here last year, so that was my first experience. And it was more of a travelling journey, really, rather than sort of, I don't like the word, but settling down or finding stability here. But it's kind of set up the base for this year's trip. So now I know kind of what it's like. I love Bali because of the like-minded people you find here, and just generally like the hustle and bustle, the business side of things, the connections you make. There's no kind of boundaries or borders or walls up with like friendship circles and things like that. Everyone's very open and always kind of in personal development, and very active, and all of these kind of spaces I want to be in, basically. So I'm from a sort of small medium town back home that it's fine, it's got its quirks and features and things, but for me it's not necessarily obviously the best weather, and people are in friendship circles and it's very hard to break through, but Bali just removes all of that for me.
Yeah, and where was back home for you?
A town called Swindon.
Swindon,
Yeah,
that's it.
in the southwest in the UK, yeah.
Okay, and it's funny you say that, because I think a lot of people say the same thing, right? Their environment back home perhaps didn't serve them, or they felt like there was something perhaps greater for them. What was it like sort of before you moved then? Did you have this feeling that you were kind of stuck, or was it more, okay, I think perhaps there could be more to life than this? What was sort of going through your head there?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, travelling is what I love as well. So to get, out of the country that you grew up in, the old cliche of travelling broadens the mind. It literally does that for me. Having been to 30 countries before I turned 30, just at the start of this year, I did my 30th, which was Portugal. And I think as well, the weather on the surface level the weather for me is a major thing. I kind of get this sort of seasonal depression in the UK a little bit. It's dark.
Yeah, let's discuss that, because one of my very good mates is that as well, and I do hear that term thrown about. What does that sort of look like for you? Because again, like in my case, I think it's easy for me to say I just don't fucking like being dark at 8 a.m. and dark at fucking 4:30.
Yeah.
But is it more than that? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, it sort of makes me lethargic and kind of not very motivated to do things every day. Like, I might stay in bed for longer because I've struggled to get out of bed, because kind of the feeling in the air, it's hard to describe really. But, you wake up at 8 and it's quite dark and grey, and then you only got sort of 6-8 hours before it gets dark again. So, the days are shorter. You kind of feel less productive during the day, and it's kind of, the grey sky kind of reflects on your kind of mood a bit. I don't know how to describe it more than that, really. Yeah.
I wonder, is that something which is sort of like self-diagnosed, like it's just pretty obvious, or is that something you've sort of researched into further? Did you try and like fix that back in the UK, or was your solution, right, let's just get the fuck out of here?
Yeah, well, two things to that. One, I researched a little bit because I had a friend who I met about 7 or 8 years ago when I was in Australia, actually. And she was living in Norway or Denmark or somewhere that kind of area, really far north, basically, where it's dark a lot of the time in the winter. And she was saying how people's mood changes in the winter. It gets so kind of depressed in the area, and people are very kind of heads down and don't really socialise much. So I kind of learned a bit from that, having that conversation from someone who lives there. And I think it's a real thing, at least over there. And the second thing is that I set up my business really so I could travel and work remotely. So it just gives me the flexibility and freedom to kind of choose where I want to live and where I want to work and run my business from. So yeah, a combination of that really put me in Bali.
Okay, yeah. So it was just, let's just escape this. It's not serving me. Don't need to look too much further. I love travel, and then kind of just made sense for you to move then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly that.
Let's talk about the business then. So, how has it allowed you, or how did it even come about? Because it's allowed you to turn your traveling hobby into your life. What's happened there? How has that developed?
Yeah, lots of things really. Like obviously we were all affected by COVID and lockdown in the UK. I was working in a corporate job, and this was for 4 years before I quit. But before that, I actually went to Australia and discovered the kind of spark for traveling, and I came across this term digital nomad, and I was like, oh, what's that? And I always had that in the back of my mind ever since kind of starting corporate life. But then COVID hit, and then everyone was working from home. I was the same. And then once the second lockdown was starting to lift, I think this was kind of like March, April 2021, I really wanted to not go back to the office, basically. I kind of wanted to pursue something else, look at this digital nomad thing. We were locked down for a year or 18 months or whatever it was. So I wanted to see if I could work remotely. And then I discovered this thing called Fiverr after watching a podcast, actually. And then I signed up to it. I had no experience, but I started offering blogs and articles in my niche, which is car industry, so automotive.
And did you have any experience doing blogs or anything like that before?
Not really. I mean, even my English wasn't great in terms of like my GCSEs. I had like a B, I think, or something. I'm never in the top set, but I always loved reading magazines, and like Top Gear magazine I always got every month when I was a kid, and I always went to car shows and stuff like that. So the passion was always there. It's kind of in the back of my head again to become like a journalist type writer. So that's kind of what sparked my passion, really, to sort of offer it as a service for other people.
Yeah, and was it a case of, right, if I can make this work, then happy days, I get to pursue my passion and make money? Or was it simply a case of, all right, let's just give this a go. I'm sure, I don't know if anything will come of it, but hey.
I kind of had that goal, right, at the end of whatever journey I was on, or I'm still on the journey, but the idea was to always kind of quit my job and see if I can work for myself and travel whenever I want to. So yeah, that kind of really sparked my kind of passion to drive more into the business, to grow it more and get more clients and things like that. Having that overarching goal, I think. And alongside that as well, like, I think a lot of industries out there need good writers, and unfortunately a lot of these people that are offering low paid ticket articles, they don't charge much, and therefore, because English isn't their first language, they're not necessarily writers, they haven't built up the knowledge and experience. But at the same time, I hadn't at the start, so I started with low pricing and stuff like that and built up my clients and slowly raised my prices as I got more and more clients.
Yeah, because I've been there on Fiverr on the hiring side before, and it's super easy to get offers and to find people in your budget and that type of thing. So how the hell did you go from 0 to however many you have now? But even just the first couple, like, how did you? Because it's so competitive, right?
Yeah, there's a little bit of kind of a game you have to play a little bit. You have to play to the Fiverr's algorithms. I mean, I don't use it much anymore. I mean, it's probably about 10% of my kind of clients and income and things like that. But as long as you've got like a good profile picture, as long as you've got a good title and description of your gig or service that you're offering, and then as long as you're genuine and you're replying on time to people, like quickly, you get pushed up in the algorithms a bit, and then you're kind of more favoured to be at the top of search results and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to show your face in the gig thumbnail and things like that. It's all very kind of YouTube-esque a little bit. And yeah, having watched this podcast to spark my interest in offering services on Fiverr, I followed what the girl Alex on the podcast said. She's also called Alex. What she said to do, basically. And then over the years, kind of, she sort of tweaked her profile, and she's someone that earned like $500,000 on Fiverr, or I think more now. But yeah, there's a certain kind of trick you follow, basically, a certain rule book.
Yeah, it's similar to building a business on Amazon.
Oh, really?
I presume so, because over there, right, there's this thing called the buy box, and if you were to try and buy something on Amazon, for example, when was the last time you went on page 56 or 57?
Never.
You don't, right? And it's a similar thing. You've got to work out the algorithm to find the buy box.
Interesting.
So if you've looked up, we had a gym equipment business, for example, during lockdown, and in our case it was, right, let's say a barbell. If people are looking for a barbell during lockdown, they're going to go onto that first page, type in barbell and think, okay, right, what's the best value for money and has reviews, we'll go for that. They're never going to go and scroll and scroll and scroll on Amazon. So you want to get into the buy box, which is that first page, and if you can do that, then happy days. Everyone in the UK searching for a barbell is going to see you.
100%.
And that's why I think, in terms of not only business, but I think a lot of different things as well, there's an algorithm for everything. So we're fortunate enough to live in a world where we have access to so much information. In your case, it was getting inspiration from a podcast and then learning about how to optimize whatever you're doing. And we can do that in so many different parts of life. For me, it was, okay, that Amazon buy box strategy, but anything that you do, same as in sort of life as well, personal development, that type of thing, just keep on improving. And if you want to find out how to improve relationships or get better at mastering your emotions, there's just tons of information out there. And I just love how, yeah, you saw an opportunity and you actually thought logically about it, right? I think a lot of the time, when we start out, it's very easy to just, right, let's just try this out and not really look for help or support. But the reality is that it can save you years, right? It can save you months just by, looking for advice and seeing who's walked the path that you've gone on. I feel like that's really important. So
Definitely.
yeah, I wonder how important it was to sort of have a niche as well, because you had a real sort of passion for cars, right?
Yeah, always. Like, even when I was a kid, I'd be pushing my own pram kind of thing on holidays and stuff. There's pictures of me getting out and pushing it and stuff. And anything with four wheels, basically. Cars, my main kind of passion because of Top Gear and things like that. And
was it Top Gear that you were just on TV and you were like, wow, this is fun?
Yeah, loads of stuff like that as a kid growing up. The kind of UK evening TV, like Fifth Gear. There was a TV show called like Scrap Heap Challenge. There's Robot Wars, all of these kind of techie, kind of car engineering based shows.
I remember Robot Wars. Was that where the cars would fight?
Yeah, that's like little robots.
Oh, is it that?
Yeah, remote controlled robots, and it got very violent.
That's really bizarre. I remember it'd be one of those things. I would never purposely go and watch it, but it would just come on.
Always on, yeah.
That's a really weird, that's a really funny memory. Okay.
Yeah, all of that. I went to motor shows, like where they had all the new cars being displayed and like previews and concept cars and things like that. And I'd always play the Gran Turismo games and watch the Fast and Furious movies. And
yeah, Gran Turismo. I think I had that on PlayStation 4. I think it came for free with one of my PlayStations or something. And I was like, okay, let's give this a go. And obviously it was good fun. But I had that in GTA 5 and was kind of going between the two.
I think we're in a different age bracket, aren't we? What? Because GTA 5 was way later for me. I kind of almost the back end of my gaming days. Yeah.
Oh, I see. You were like retired by then.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I think GTA 5 was 2013.
Right. Yeah.
And then I think my gaming days. I do wonder about that though, because my mentality at the time was I was learning to DJ.
Oh, cool.
And I thought, well. And I was kind of getting into that headspace. This is when I first started thinking about how I use my time and that type of thing. And my mentality was, am I being productive? Like, that was my mentality, right? And with the gaming, and I wasn't like a serial gamer or anything. And that's a whole other debate as well, because you see people talking about, is gaming good for you, bad for you, all of that type of thing. My mentality was, right, if it's FIFA career mode or something like that, perhaps I could be spending that time doing something creative like DJing. And so I sold my PlayStation 4, bought some decks instead and started doing that. But there were times where I was like, I kind of just want a game of FIFA or a game or two of FIFA. And I do wonder, my mentality was, right, if I've got spare time, I can read a book and I can DJ and that type of thing. I do think there is a place for just now and then just completely switch, like completely switching off. And don't get me wrong, those are fantastic outlets, and I love DJing, but I think there is a beauty in just now and then just detaching. I wonder if that ever crossed your mind back then or anything like that.
I think it was a similar journey, yeah, where I was like, I could be doing something more productive here. But I think what I've learned in recent years as well is being like the difference between busy and productive, and then looking busy, but you're not actually doing anything. Where that's where the time that you would need to switch off, basically. You know, luckily we're here, we can go to the beach or play paddle or whatever people do, right? But yeah, when you're back home in kind of like the UK where it's not necessarily nicest weather to go outside and stuff like that, you're kind of in your own head a lot. And yeah, I think at one point gaming was kind of a bit of an escape, but yeah, like you said, it can be a point where it is good to take breaks every now and then. Yeah, I'm trying to work out, because otherwise I'd just be working 24/7, to be honest. I'm trying to work out where my breaks are having coming here, because it is so kind of a productive hustle kind of environment. Not in a bad way, but people just working on the business, on themselves.
Yeah, well, you've hit the nail on the head there in terms of what I'm sort of navigating as well. I love what I'm doing with this podcast. I love what I'm doing with all my other projects. It's like an endless list, and it's just so exciting.
That's really cool.
But then I've also in a relationship for the first time, first sort of proper relationship. So I now have to sort of, well, I say have to, but yeah, put a lot of energy into that. And obviously there's my health and there's just all this other stuff, but I really enjoy it. So again, I think the key there is, right, am I actually working? And perhaps there is a slot in the morning where you are working, you are productive. And I think if you're just conscious about, okay, how much have I actually done in the last hour? Am I just being fucking slow at this, or am I actually getting some work done? I think while you mentioned it as well, you said, just rewinding back to the whole gaming thing, you said it was a form of escapism for a while. What did you mean by that?
Just mix of things, really. Like at school and college and stuff, I took everything quite seriously. I still kind of do, really, and I get frustrated quickly, or like you said about being busy and productive. And I feel like it was an escape from like maybe situations going on in my family, arguments, whatever it might be. It could be like stresses at work, or I was working from like 16, 17, so I had like a job in like doing databases or something in the UK. Yeah, it's just kind of an escape from that, really. I think just before that kind of adulthood age as well, like when you turn 17 towards 18, it's like I've got to make big decisions now, like university and what I'm going to do in my life and stuff like that, and what my friends doing, and I feel like I actually kind of, looking back on it now, not that it's a regret, because I did a degree in automotive engineering, right? So it's relevant, but I don't necessarily think I needed it. And I just followed the path of what my friends were doing, and not knowing what the right path was. Like my parents never really encouraged me to go to university. They were never bothered, right? I was like, oh, this is the right path to go down. But 3 years later, I was like, how much further have I got? Yes, I got all this knowledge kind of thing, but the course wasn't necessarily run the best way, and the lecturers weren't, the best kind of, some of them were great, but it was a bit kind of very structured, but also we were lost in what we were doing kind of thing at the work, during the coursework and the exams and stuff. It was a very strange experience. Yeah, university was almost like, at the end of it, we felt like it wasn't teaching you things, it was teaching you how to learn things, if that makes sense. Rather, for you to find the information out yourself, rather than them giving you, here's an equation, here's the answer, find out the answer. It's very strange.
It's kind of a strange one. From it. Yeah, it's funny even just looking back on university, because I think realistically, while I appreciate the skills I did learn there, I think mainly I look back and I'm like, right, it was actually the social skills that I learned.
Yep.
And I had a lot of fun. And I also think learning critical thinking is also an important skill, which perhaps isn't taught in school. So I do see the benefit there. It's interesting you mentioned how you were just following what your friends were doing, because how often, especially at that age as well, if you don't have the answers, you're just going to lean on your best mate or that type of thing, and they might not necessarily know what they're doing. And it's a very strange age, and often I don't think we challenge that route. It's always university, then get a job after that. I wonder what the sort of solution would be. How do you help someone in that situation? What would you have liked, do you think, back then? Would you have wanted just, I don't know, to have all the options laid out to you, and how would that have gone? It's an interesting one.
I was too comfortable, I feel. Like I didn't really push the boundaries of maybe exploring more about what I like or kind of interjecting in my life. I was kind of flowing with the path and just with the river and just letting it go. And rather than kind of taking a different avenue, I just carried on going down the path, and then that's what ended up happening. So yeah, ideally it would have been nice to maybe speak with someone who had experience, or maybe speak to my later self, right? That would be great, but looking back on it now, obviously it's impossible. But yeah, something like having all the paths laid out, maybe someone who kind of, I think the world changes so much, like the technology that comes out, and YouTube wasn't really a thing. I mean, it was just about when I was at uni, right? But I'm not that old. But yeah, there's so many different paths now, like of creators, of solopreneurs and business owners, and just like coaching and everything like that isn't really around too much like 10, 15 years ago.
That's a good point to make as well. I think, yeah, there is sort of a cultural shift perhaps. But then again, I do feel like perhaps you had to go on that journey and go through the standard route to then figure out that it wasn't for you. Whereas some people follow that, and although that might be all they know, they actually are quite good at it and they enjoy it. So perhaps it is a case of just doing the status quo and then realising it's not for you. I don't really have the answer. I'm interested to talk about, because you mentioned you took life quite seriously around 17, 18. I think I can relate. I felt like I've always taken, especially at that age, I was always taking life quite seriously, and I always felt, I don't know if you felt like this, I always felt like compared to my friends, I was always, I'm not sure quite how to describe it, but I always felt like I was just more, just aware of life maybe, and I was more, I don't know, again, I can't really come up with other words, but I kind of just took life a bit more seriously, and then I think that kind of puts a bit of pressure on yourself, and I saw that with a couple of my friends as well. Did you find that you were quite sort of different from a lot of your peers in that sense?
Yeah, I feel definitely I had like a side hustle, if you want to call it that nowadays, but like when I was like 14, going back to it, I remember like the PS3 coming out, or I think I was younger than that, and I was selling things on eBay on the side. Like I always wanted to kind of, I don't know, I've always done what I wanted to do, like buy something that I wanted to buy, like cars or something over the years. Never kind of flashy or like over expensive cars, but I've always wanted to kind of set out a goal and then try and achieve it through whatever means kind of possible. So yeah, at the early age, I was always like selling things on the side, and then no one else in my friend group really did that too much, I don't think. And I think my mum's very much inspirational in that sense, because she's quite entrepreneurial, and she's run her own business kind of from the age of like 25, 26 in the catering industry, doing events and stuff. So she never really worked for anyone else much.
Awesome.
So I think that kind of is a different path to what a lot of my friends have done. So maybe it's just a case of what they know basically from their parents and from their upbringing and who they surround themselves with. So yeah, I had that little bit of like cutaway from traditional life kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really funny because we don't really choose who our friends are at that age. It's just like, right, you go to school and then it's the 5 people you get on best with at that time, but they're not necessarily people who you'd go out and choose if you had the biggest choice of people. That's really interesting. I wonder how that sort of made you feel as a kid then. Like, did you, in terms of like fitting in and that type of stuff, were people sort of questioning you at times, do you think?
Yeah, I think I didn't really fit in too much. I was always like in the corner, I was always the quiet one at school, basically. For whatever reason, I'm not sure whether it was I was put down, like, be quiet as a kid, or whatever it might be from family, or whether it might have been my, I was a bit bullied a bit at school for my height and my looks and stuff like that. So never really had a voice, I feel, too much. I'm still learning to get over that now. Therapy and things have helped, because it's just not caring what other people think and just being yourself, which I'm sure people are well aware of that are listening. But it's a massive step for some people, I feel, and I'm still learning it now. But I think I've gone way beyond that. There's this quote I heard from another podcast. It was like, your internal identity lags 2 years behind your external reality. So I don't know if you know what that means, but as far as I can tell, working on your stuff, your personal development internally, doesn't show until 2 years later, basically, on your external reality.
Right.
I mean, physically, I'm here in Bali, but I'm still like I feel like a bit of a, not an imposter, but like a bit kind of sort of earlier on in the learning journey of perhaps other people are. So it's maybe in 2 years' time it'll be different. And I think 2 years ago I was totally different as well. So
And you don't really notice the difference because you are working and building these habits. It's only once those habits compound that we really see the difference. And it's like if you're on, let's say we take like body composition, for example, if you're looking at your body and you want to improve that because that's something that will make you more confident. So like when you look in the mirror day by day, you're not going to see a difference. But then it's like if you actually take month 3 versus when you started, then that's when you'll see the difference. But over time, you don't see that. I wonder how that self-development journey or looking intrinsically started for you, because I think a lot of people, they just kind of stay in that mindset, right? So they had a shitty experience at school, parents, whatever it was, and they don't really see that there's another side to life, and actually, wow, they can actually have a growth mindset and they can actually change. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't see that for a while. So what age were you when you thought, I can actually do something about this, and what sort of pushed you in that direction?
yeah, there's a lot of things that I think I take influence from who I follow online, like Gary V, for example. In the early days, for me, was like a huge inspiration because I watched this video just before I was going to Australia at 23, and he was saying like 20s is when you experiment basically your life. You know, you move in with roommates and you start a band together. You go traveling the world. You ask the girl out, whatever it might be. Like you try something different from the norm, because then you can always obviously go back if you don't like it or if something doesn't work properly. And 30 is still young, right? So 20s is where you kind of go out there and find something different. Again, I think it's always planted the seed for me, like maybe my mum or my influence growing up. So I've always had that seed planted. Whether or not I could find out what it would grow into, I didn't know. But there's lots of things, like I used to read at university, actually, my last year, my uni course mate gave me a book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I don't know if you know about it, but that kind of opened up the world for what I thought my mum was telling me the whole time, like my influence growing up. Like I didn't have to go and pursue a university degree. I can get a normal job and earn income to then maybe like invest in property and have passive incomes, quote unquote, and stuff like that. So I've always been interested in finance, kind of different from the norm in that area. And then it went on to Gary V, and then I started traveling to Australia. So that kind of maybe put the paddle in and break free from that.
Did you find that you could reinvent yourself there? Because you're traveling there, you're at an age where, well, you're not a kid. People just don't go up and randomly insult you because they've got, even if they have insecurities and they think something about you, they're not going to project it onto you, right? So did you find Australia was just a chance to reinvent your identity? Because I found that myself as well. I was a certain character in school. A lot of people, I think, remember me for who I was back then, and then you grow and transform, and yet people still see the old you and they'll perceive you a certain way. And it's only when you get out of that. That's why I was never big on groups at all. At school I had like my 1 or 2 great mates, and I kind of just avoided the bigger crowds and stuff. Primary, secondary, I was always like that, and occasionally like picked on and stuff, but generally speaking I found that was the way forward was just right, do my own thing, and eventually I just stopped giving a shit, right? But coming back to the question, did you find that this was a new chance to be a new Alex, which didn't have all this old shit and old perceptions attached to him?
Yeah, exactly that. I think it was the start of it, because I went solo. It was the first kind of big thing I'd done on my own. I knew one person there, but I didn't meet up with her until like 3 or 4 weeks in. Other than that, it was just me dumped in Sydney, not knowing what I was doing. Like I booked a hostel around the corner from the train station. And I remember it, yeah, very distinctly. And actually, the first travel person I met traveling in the hostel is actually here in Bali. I'm going to meet up with her like this week or next week.
Wow.
And we met up again last year because she's living here now. It's funny how things come full circle. But like, yeah, those kind of things where I was thrown into something new, I had to kind of adapt and work out what I like, what I don't like. And at the same time, I was young, so I was like, let's just travel and just what has got, you know, what Australia's got to offer for me, like in terms of experiences, and I had a great time up the East Coast, and yeah, just kind of lived in the moment a bit more, and not necessarily worried about what other people think. Just meeting new people, forcing myself, because I'm quite introverted. So in hostels, obviously, you speak to other people, and all the time you're in, you know, eight bed dorms and stuff like that. So yeah, that really pushed it for me, and I met great people there. I'm still friends with today, obviously. Yeah, and then from that, like, you meet friends that are from Germany or from wherever it might be in the world, right? So I've been back to Germany a few times to see them, and we've gone traveling together in different parts of Europe. Yeah, it's just travel's huge for me.
It's beautiful, man. I always say that. I say to people, man, if you're lost or feeling a certain way, or you want to improve your social skills, just go solo traveling.
Yeah.
And in their mind, they're going to think, oh, I can't do that by myself. But that's how you fucking grow. It's incredible. And like you said, if you're going solo traveling at a hostel, you can look at the reviews. Some hostels are more social than others, right? But if you go to a hostel, chances are people are going to be in the same boat. Of course, you're not always going to avoid them, but generally speaking, the cunts that you were picking on you in school, though that type of crowd aren't going to be going to the hostels. They're going to be, you know, probably staying in their same bubble with their own mindset. If you go there, chances are a lot of other people going there. They want to meet people. They want to be social. They want to go out. I think that's sort of the big thing, right? I think I did that at 18 when I was actually meant to go interrailing around Europe with my best mate, but we went on a lads trip to Croatia. I think it was Hvar or something like that. He got his wallet stolen, and I think he got just all the stuff that could go wrong on a lad's holiday did. So his mum said, right, you're not going interrailing.
Oh no.
And so it was just me. And I thought, well, I've spent this money on an interrail ticket. I think it was about 150 quid for 3 weeks back then. So I thought, well, okay, I'm just going to go solo, fuck it, at 18. And that was, I think, where I really started to transform, because before then I was at school and gradually you get more mature, but I never felt like I fit in, and I had a lot of limiting beliefs. Every time I tried to express myself, I was shut down and this type of thing. And yeah, it was, and then naturally, I think it was around 15 to 18 where I started getting quite successful with women as well. So that actually built up my confidence quite a bit. But then there was still, I think, a part of me that was, I think still quite needed some work. And I think that was the first stage where I was like, okay, wow, people actually like me, not because of my looks, but for who I am. And which is quite powerful actually looking back. But yeah, I just went there and it was just awesome just being by myself. And that's when I really learned to love my own company as well. And when I found it so easy to meet people, I was 18 and I'd go around traveling. I think I did, Germany, Prague, Vienna, all of these type of places. I remember, and the social skills that you learn, mate. So I'm sure you've done similar tricks as well. I'd love to hear those. But I remember being in, I think it was Bled in Slovenia, if I'm correct. And I remember going out and I was like, I'm going to find a group of people to go out with. And there was this big group of people, about 10 of them leaving this restaurant, 6 to 10 people. And I pretended that I was looking at the menu. So I got talking to them and I just thought, right, this is my chance. So I went over there and I said, hey guys, is this restaurant any good? I was looking for a place to eat. And then they got to talking and they were like, to be honest, mate, it's not that great. We're going to go to this other place. Feel free to join us. I was like, yeah, let's fucking go.
Yeah.
And shit like that happened all the time. And then I'd go into this group and then again, I'd just feel fucking normal because people weren't judging me for all the stupid shit I did as a kid. And I would just go out, sit there and we'd just start talking and we'd go around and they'd say, right, what's everyone doing for a living? I'm a teacher. Yeah, I do sort of engineering, software engineering, that type of thing. Then it came to me, and I said I've just left school, and everyone was like, "What? What's going on?" Because I've always looked older for my age as well. And looking back as well, I think I always hung out with people older than me because I felt like they were more mature. I feel like they wouldn't just fucking judge me all the time. And that's why I think people always presumed I was older because of the way I carried myself. And I was just used to having better conversations with people older than me. I don't know if sort of you found that as well, especially when you were younger. Did you ever find that, okay, these people don't really understand me, I'm going to seek out maybe people older than me, or how did you find your tribe at that age, or did you?
To be honest, it sounds like you experienced it much earlier than I have, which is good, right? The earlier the better, obviously. People spend their lives never experiencing it or seeing the other side of what's in their own head kind of thing. For me, I felt like it was, and probably still is to some extent, quite lonely in a sense of like finding who is on a similar path. That's why obviously I've come to Bali as well, because people are on very similar paths here. So yeah, in the UK or where I grew up, it was very difficult to kind of meet like-minded people that wanted to pursue something different. Yeah, in only recent years I've kind of found that, and even then the network is quite small. Like only a handful of people I can kind of relate to. I mean, I'm in my own community now. Like it's called the Connect community, and there are people me and a friend are running it in Bali, but we've got a couple of people scattered around the UK still and in Europe. But yeah, they're all on the same kind of path of offering a service. But other than that, like for me, it's very limited from what I found. Yes, there's networking events and things like that in the UK, but again, like you said, a lot of them are older, so we kind of built this community as well to have a sort of younger aspect of entrepreneurs to help them out. And what I would have liked, obviously, maybe 5 years ago or 3 years ago when I started, to speak to and connect on a deeper level, because we know what kind of struggles we have as an entrepreneur and building a business. Yeah.
So it's focused on sort of entrepreneurship and that type of thing.
Yeah, but it's more about just being open and connecting on a deeper level, really. Like where your passion or where your company started from, and what what your values are and what you're struggling with at the moment, and celebrating wins and successes and stuff like that. So it's really good. Yeah, we've had a few meetups, and yeah, it's just always turned into like a therapy session, to be honest, every time we go, even though it's like in an open restaurant or whatever it might be, in like an open environment. But yeah, we've definitely connected on a deeper level through those meetups and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's awesome that you sort of started that. Is that because, do you think the demand's just always there, but just a lot of people don't have a place to go to? A lot of the time it's, okay, social norms, there's a group of people you hang out with and there's the pub or something like that. Is that, why do you think, why there is such high demand? Is that a lot of people just kind of like just sick of not having an outlet or something or a place they can speak to people, right?
Yeah, it's sort of like outside of your close contacts, really. You kind of get a new pair of eyes on your business or your life, and then you can connect with someone who's in a similar space. So yeah, otherwise social norms, like you said, typically you'd be going to the pub in the UK and just having a beer and involving alcohol, right? I mean, I've hardly touched it since I've come here. I think I've had one beer in just over like 5-6 weeks. So yeah, that's just totally different to back home. So yeah, we want to kind of, I think people don't talk about their mental health, or today, like in today's world, definitely it's more prominent, but in the business kind of where it relates to business, whether you should be hustling 24/7 or what the right tools are to use, or how you can react to some kind of pushback from a client, or awkward journeys that you might have with them, and I don't know, being cut completely from a client, or all these things that might happen in the business, especially when you're starting out. So yeah, it's kind of an aspect to go on a deeper level, really, to understand who you are and how you can react to someone, and put in systems in place to prevent that from happening in the future as well, right?
Yeah, and you've touched upon an interesting point there. I think we are stronger together.
100%.
It's so easy to think, I think eventually, because you do, especially with entrepreneurship, I feel like you do sort of break out of the norms, and you do feel like you are alone on this journey, and it's like, okay, let's do this, and you block out everything else. But the reality is, when you start sort of giving back, and then that opens up the space to then receive more, right? And I feel like that's how we grow. It's just like building these communities. Here in Bali is a great example. You see a lot of them now, and people have gone on the path that you've gone on, and people just there to help out. And yeah, you can't just, it's not about you, it's about everyone else. And I think when you open yourself up to receive support, drop the ego a bit and say, listen, I don't actually know how to do this, or how do you guys do this? And the reality is, everyone wants the same thing, but we're probably brought up to think, right, okay, we can't ask for help. We have to do everything alone. I wonder if there's anything that, because I know you said you went on a bit of a journey and still on that journey. I think we all are. I think our journey never really stops of self-development and figuring out all these old patterns and stuff. Do you find that there's been anything like from maybe childhood or that type of experience which is carried over perhaps, like which has had a big impact on your social life, and how have you sort of navigated that?
Yeah, I feel, well, there's a few things here, because I still have, kind of very self-conscious, maybe towards physically. Obviously, I'm 6'5.5", so I almost kind of stand out wherever I go, right? Especially in Indonesia, when the locals obviously are a bit shorter than I am. But it's that kind of thing that's carried over, because obviously I can't change my physical appearance, but at the same time I have to accept it and embrace it, and just work with it rather than against it. Because I'd always try, and we talked about earlier about shying away in the corner and stuff like that, and almost like body language wise, like close my body a bit, but now I'm much more kind of expressive, or standing up straight, and kind of being proud of my height, and I don't know, the way I look and stuff like that. So yeah, that's carried over a bit, and I'm learning to either push it down or just embrace it more, like just working on it basically, right? Because your health at the end of the day is the most important thing. So starting to work out more, and take care of my body a bit more, and trying to let go of old habits, whether that be food or lack of exercise or whatever it might be. That's the one path I'm definitely fully focused on here now.
Okay. Yeah, because again, we are fortunate to have access to so much information, right? So I think it's just getting those done. And when you get to a point of like knowing what needs to be done, then it just comes down to sort of discipline and how badly you want it, right? And it's funny you mentioned there, because I feel like we've got all these beliefs about our personal characteristics and stuff, just because some people picked on us when we were younger. But it's I think it's about sort of embracing those parts of yourself, right? So my girlfriend focuses on like shadow work and inner child work and that type of thing as well. And
Cool.
I've learned about that as well, because I've had some quite powerful experiences with sound healing and that type of thing, where it would take me back to my childhood, primary school, and then you start reliving these experiences. And then when you go back to your inner child, and then you imagine your older self coming down and just sort of comforting in that moment when they're going through whatever emotion it is, anger or embarrassment, that type of thing. Your older self sort of comes down, and you just visualize this every day. Like visualize you comforting your inner child and that type of thing. And that can be really powerful. And then whenever that emotion comes up in the future, you then become aware of it and you navigate through it. I think there's a lot of powerful tools that people can do. I think it's really important, if you do have these insecurities which have arisen throughout your life, don't shy away from them, because then they're just going to keep on having an impact. One of the big things that I've learned recently as well is, if you're trying to protect something by avoiding it, so you were saying, you were sort of in the corner and just hoping nobody sees your height, but eventually there's two parts of you then. There's your body, and then there's the protector. Whereas in reality, if you just stand there, you're one, and there's nothing trying to protect there. And then that way, you're just going to feel so much better in yourself. If there's nothing to protect, then you're going to be more present, and there's nothing which people can sort of attack you with. And then if you start sort of embracing yourself as who you are, and not trying to push it down, but actually showing it to the world, then I think that's where the magic happens. But that's the problem, is that a lot of people want to shy away from it, that uncomfortable feeling. Or, it's like, for example, if you're sat at a dinner table and, I don't know, you discuss something, and then, I don't know, your mother says, oh, don't discuss that in front of dad, because he'll get pissed off or whatever, or it will trigger something. But that's actually the wrong way to live. I think we can't hide away anything. If something triggers you, or if something just sparks a reaction in you, then great. You can then work through that, and then you can be like, okay, why has this happened? But the problem is, I think in society, we're not really taught to deal with this shit. It's always like, right, just hide it away, don't speak about that, don't do anything of that. Whereas actually the reality is opposite. We've got to embrace it. Okay, why are you angry about that? Where, I think just uncovering those deeper layers can help us just live longer, right? Longer? Well, maybe live longer, but live, just live with a greater sort of well-being, if you like. And the reality is, everyone's got some form of insecurity, right? And again, it's funny, it's all about our perception. I know a lot of people, they might be 5'2" and they might be fucking envious of your height, or they might be a fighter and they'll be like, fuck, or they're a boxer, they're like, oh man, I wish I had a couple more inches. It's all about perspective, I guess.
100%. And I think going back to what you said earlier about not shying away from maybe like confrontational things or discussions that you shouldn't talk about in public or like at the table, like it all boils down to like the only way out is through, right? That quote of, if you want the other side to be, blossoming, and you want a decent, powerful life, then the only way out of to get that is going through the hardship and discovering who you are. And it boils down to working on it. No one's going to save you. And I think that's what I've realised maybe like a few years ago as well, is that there's not this like external reality that's going to come in and whatever your beliefs are maybe, but it's different. But there's no one going to come hand you the rule book or hand you the solutions, right? It's down to you to find out yourself. I think people often think, even I, subject to this, but like they think that someone's going to give them an idea for where to go next, decide what to do next, and maybe you can get feedback from people and stuff. But it's you that made the decision, right? If you want to work out today, then that's going to be one day behind. Not to be too harsh on yourself at the same time, but it's massive to realise that the sooner the better.
It's funny because that's one of the first things. Again, I think it comes down, you said, it was your mother who was the positive influence for you. Again, I think looking back at my family, super lucky, because I always had that mindset of shit's not going to happen for you. And I always said this to my mates as well. And, it'd be a problem, a pain point for them, right? It's like, but, I don't know what to do. It's like, okay, what are you doing? It's the same with everything. I've always had that belief. You've got to go out and make shit happen. So, again, there's this limiting belief I see in certain parts of society. It's like, oh, okay, there's them and there's us. There's the rich and the poor. It's like, and look, I came from a very privileged upbringing, right? Super lucky. But I do have this belief. It's like, no matter where you're from, you can't put yourself you can't label yourself as, or label them. You've got the power to transform your life. And even through this podcast, I've seen how ordinary people have done extraordinary things. You can do incredible things with your mindset, right? Like even yourself, you're a great example. Like you were the kid who was picked on and bullied and told all these things about, right? How easy would it have been you if you just didn't have the right upbringing at home and the wrong environment? How easy would it have you to be, okay, right, that's just who I am this whole life. I need to work for someone else. And I guess, I don't really connect with people here, but I guess we all that's where we belong. It's like, no, you've made this lifestyle for yourself. You're still working towards it. You're going out, you're seeking better connections. And again, it's just another great form of inspiration. It doesn't matter where you're from and that type of thing. I mean, my dad's as well, he grew up in a council estate, and then his mother came from literally nothing, escaped Nazi Germany, came to the UK at 19 with fuck all. And then they grew up in a council flat, and then my dad's ended up going through that journey of he didn't know what he was going to do, but he was, I think, around 25 where he, yeah, started his accounting business and then worked his way up, you know. And again, you see so many stories like that. And again, I see this argument of, okay, well, yeah, our parents and that generation had it easier because of the property market and that type of thing. But it's like, well, that type of mindset, where's that going to get you, mate?
Yeah, no, I love this. Yeah, it does not. I just one thing that angers me online is that the complaints about property prices versus 1970s versus now, right? And things were different back then, but at the same time, well, what can you do about it? You can't do anything. You can't go back in time and buy a house, can you? You've got to deal with what situation you're put in now. So if you truly want a house, you've got to work and maybe make sacrifices or be smarter with your money to save up for a deposit to get a house, right? It's down to you. And I don't know, yeah, it's just so much, it pops up online about that and people buying avocado toast as an excuse to not get a house these days. But I did it. I've actually got a house in the UK. I saved up when I left Australia or came back to the UK in 2018, and then I took 2.5 years to save for a deposit, bought a house in COVID. So it's sat there at home now in my hometown still, which kind of, again, going back to our earlier conversations where at the time it was the right decision because I was working and I knew it was an investment and stuff like that and working from home and it was a nice environment. But yeah, now it's a bit more of a burden, so not necessarily always the right thing to buy a house as well. I think nowadays it's changed because I've got that bill coming out every month of the mortgage, of the utilities, etc., right? And I've got to earn that income no matter what, where I am in the world, right?
Well, even if you're renting it, it's like
Yeah.
renting it out, you're still responsible for all the fixes and that type of shit. And yeah, it's I could see that as well. And again, it just comes down to, I don't think there's any right or wrong way to go about life. You know, if you want to buy a house, buy a fucking house. If you want to rent anywhere, just do that. But just question what you've been told, right? Whether it's like go to university or you got to get this job or you've got to do this. It's like just question everything. It's like the biggest thing I'm passionate about. There's no right or wrong way. But look at different sides. And again, coming back to before, this whole, I don't think we've ever had it better. I mean, how much access do we have to online courses or information? Just we can go on Spotify and one book that could change your life is there, included with Spotify Premium, and it's
mad.
It's crazy. We have access to so much, and our parents never had access to ChatGPT. And can you imagine, can you imagine if Shakespeare got to put all his ideas into ChatGPT and shit? It's mind blowing. But you've got to seek out the opportunities, and again, it comes down to mindset. If you've got that positive mindset and you're sort of manifesting stuff. Some people believe in it, some don't. But the reality is, no matter what way you want to frame it, if you're always thinking about where you want to go, it doesn't matter. Your subconscious is going to seek out those opportunities, right? And it will just come to you naturally. And I think a lot of people just see that, even manifestation, they're like, oh, well, what's all that bollocks? It's like, well, look behind it, look at the process, and then you'll see that it makes sense. Again, I don't know if you've done anything like that or there's any tools, like whether it's meditation or anything like that have really been instrumental in your personal development journey.
Yeah, there's a few things. I think I dabbled in meditation during COVID. Obviously, it was tough times. I wanted to kind of calm my mind down a bit. Again, I'm not entirely sure what I chose to do meditation for, but yeah, it's something that I struggle with in terms of the focus and the concentration that needs to it. And I think what it boils down to is what I did during COVID when I signed up to Fiverr. I'm now doing social media marketing, by the way, totally different. But it was what I do after I finish my 9 to 5. It's that 5 to 9 in the evening, right? It's what you choose to do with your outside time. And so for me, it was fulfilling orders and helping clients out with the work and pursuing something else with that goal. So I think for me, it was always having the ambition and goal to travel or to work remotely full time and choose where I want to live and have location independence was the real motivating factor. And it still is now, right? Obviously, if it all goes to shit now, then I'll have to build up something else again, and with that goal in mind. So it kind of always keeps you fresh and motivated for me. In terms of techniques, it's hard. Yeah, I think it's just writing down your goals and then splitting it up in terms of like maybe shorter term goals. There's a good workshop by Ali Abdal, and I'm sure you're familiar with who that is, but he does a quarterly workshop where it's like 3 hours, and then you reflect on what you've done in the last quarter, and then you plan out your next quarter to achieve your year goal or quarterly goals. There's another one coming up in December, I think, obviously the final one of the year. So yeah, that's really good. I feel I don't take enough time to step back and work on the business as much as I perhaps could, because people like me will work in the business so much they think they're kind of just focused in the business and keep things the status quo, like you said earlier, and not working on the bigger picture all the time. It's something I need to work on a lot more, but that's why I've come to Bali as well, because you get more time to focus on that.
I think it is quite easy to just get bogged down on like the daily tasks and that type of thing. But yeah, I think once you sort of take a step back and see like, right, where do I want to be in 3 months' time? This can go. You don't even have to have a business yet, but just again, I think we used to use like the 2 year thing, and then work backwards from there. So you've got goals in 2 years. Where do you want to be? Okay, I want to be here. I want to be living here. I want to be doing this. I want to be earning this amount of money. Okay, what do you want to? Okay, so let's work back from there. The quarter before that, where okay, how are you going to get to there? Okay, and then you work backwards from there, and then suddenly it doesn't look that far. And then once you've created that structure, you then don't have to focus about the end point. You can just focus on what you need to do every day to get there. And it's breaking it down, and of course it's not always that simple. You're going to come across hurdles along the way, but I think if you've just got something to follow and you trust the process, and then seek out a mentor, seek out someone who's done the work that you've done, and then be like, okay, cool, is this going to work? What do you think about this plan? That type of shit. And then yeah, I think go from there really, and just keep on evolving, keep learning, but again, just being happy where you are as well. I don't know if you strike me as very ambitious, obviously, upbringing and selling shit on eBay at a young age, and then yeah, have you found that to be tricky? Just kind of like enjoying the present, if you like.
Yeah, reflecting on this year, actually, I only did it once, where I reflected back on the previous 3 weeks. I went to Canada basically to visit my friend in on the west kind of coast of Canada. But we did loads of things. We went on a Yukon road trip. We went to Vancouver. We went to. I did my own separate trip in Alberta and Banff and things like that. But I set up my business so I would have that time off. Basically, I only had like a couple of things I had to check in on during that 3 weeks, and it was a massive load of work beforehand. Obviously, you have to sacrifice that to have the freedom. I feel there's always yin and yang, but for me, when I was on that trip, I was really in the moment and present, and I just, the nature was incredible. Like I could fully take it in. We were on a road trip in a big camper, like RV, and yeah, there were bears, and we saw a beaver and all these kind of cool animals and stuff, and the nature was incredible, lakes and snow-topped mountains and stuff, and yeah, that was the real trip for me. That for the first time in a while, apart from maybe my Australia trip, where I was like in the moment, I wasn't thinking about my business. And I really stepped back and just enjoyed the opportunity that kind of, well, proud of myself really, like taking that step up and with my business and being in a place to just switch off for 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think there's something about nature as well, and I've read about people who, they're struggling, they've sold everything in the UK and they've moved to Australia, for example, and they're really struggling with the adaptations and that type of shit. And yeah, what has helped them is just going out into nature and appreciating the beauty, and it's like, right, I can't get this back home, and it kind of just grounds you again. And again, just being out as well. You hear so much about being out in nature and its benefits. Andrew Huberman touches upon it a lot. So important, and yet another reason to travel. If you haven't travelled yet, get out, do it.
Definitely.
100%. Yeah, I think that's a good note to sort of end this on. Time has flown by, but
It has.
yeah, get out, travel. But yeah, I think this has been really inspiring actually. Probably a lot more than you think. But yeah, I think just hearing your story and not only in business but also personally as well and how you're navigating that, it's been a really, really cool conversation. One way in which we like to finish the podcast is a bit more light-hearted. It's always a song suggestion for the audience. Alex, what is your favourite song at the moment?
Wow, that is a great question. I actually played it on drums yesterday. Had my first kind of drum lesson here. It's quite a deeply emotional song, but it's called Oil and Water, and it's by a band called Paris. Pvris, they're spelt.
Okay.
Yeah, my favourite band.
Oh, it's a wicked. All right. Yeah, I'll be giving it a listen. I love stuff like this because it takes me out of my box of, dance, tech, house, that type of stuff.
Okay, cool.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to giving it a try.
Cool.
But,
Well, thanks very much for having me on, and yeah, always a pleasure to sit down and chat about life.
Yeah, it's been awesome, man. Most welcome. Thanks so much.
Cheers.